Hello everybody. It's Friday, it's April the 23rd, and I'm here with my coffee and with Jonah, who's on the floor. He'll say hello in a bit, and it's Fridays with Father. I hope you're doing well, as am I. It's the third week of Easter now, and so this coming Sunday is the fourth Sunday in Easter, which more or less is about halfway, really, during the time of Easter, which comes to its conclusion on the Feast of Pentecost, which is really in some ways, the feast of this parish, the Church of the Holy Spirit. Anyways, I just want to put ourselves liturgically in place. It's Easter, and we're still celebrating the joy that comes with that. So do your best. Do your best. This past week has been, reasonably eventful in one way or another. I know this last week I met with our local bishop, Bishop Bishop Grob, for the annual review of our parish to look how things are going, to check in with me, etc., etc. And it happens every year. So due to COVID and other circumstances, we couldn't meet in the usual way. So I went up to the bishop's office this past Wednesday, and we had a conversation. Now, Bishop Bishop Grob is a new bishop to the area. In fact, he's only been a bishop since November. I do know him from a previous job where we worked together, and he's a nice man, and he comes across as quite human, so which is very encouraging, So hopefully, he tried to visit us back in November. He was scheduled to say a mass for us here at Church of the Holy Spirit, but he caught the virus, so he had to isolate, so that was cancelled. But we look forward to inviting him to be with us again, so you can all actually meet him in person. Anyway, it was a good meeting, and as we talked about, really, a lot of the conversation was to do with COVID and how we're managing to function with everything concerned, and he was quite pleased to hear that we're doing well. That we have an average kind of like capacity each Sunday of like 200 people at Mass. We can take a few more, but I mean around 200 is the people that generally come overall. So that's kind of good news. He was pleased to hear that, and also the fact that we're keeping up with the celebration of the sacraments, and we have our full schedule of masses available at this time. So nothing has really been sort of pushed back or limited in spite of everything that's happened to us. He was pleased to hear that we're celebrating confirmations, even though he's not coming. It's me that's doing it. And again tonight, I've got another 22 or so of our young people receiving that sacrament, and that's been done over a period of weeks, and it's a nice thing to do. And I think he's quite happy that we continue to do it that way, but we're not sure if we'll get the permission to do it or continue to do it. We talked about the financials of the parish, which about this time last year, our giving was down by 20% due to COVID. And right now, it's just down just by 4%. So we've done a lot to improve our giving. It's a sign that more people have come back or have started to give electronically from afar. And our outreach through things like Fridays with Father and streaming is having some effect. So thank you to you for your continued support of Church of the Holy Spirit. It means a lot, the fact we're still able to function in spite of the difficulties, and please continue to be as generous as possible. We were lucky here in the parish to be able to get 2 government loans to help sort of keep us afloat. And the first of those loans has been forgiven already, so let's hope for the best on the next one as well. So that's good. They're good signs, and I keep meeting more and more people who have been vaccinated, and the conversation very often when you say that you've been vaccinated is like, which one did you get? So so it's nice to know that, and to see that more and more people are receiving the vaccines, which means that there's more confidence, which means that more people will come back, and there's more activity, more growth. We also talked about the fact that in terms of our fundraising, because of COVID last year. The annual Family Fest here at Church of the Holy Spirit had to be cancelled, and it doesn't look that good for this year either, because it's scheduled to happen in June. Now, I know that the committee is working on looking at something for September, but I'm not sure where we are with that right now. But even so, we're looking at doing a number of different fundraisers just to try and sort of keep our fundraising up over this coming year. I know that, in spite of the shortfall and the different things going on, and not having a family fest last year, which would normally raise about $50,000 for this parish, we were still able to raise like $21,000, fundraising efforts, little things like raffles and selling of masks and one thing and the other, and the drive-in activity. All of that really helped to sort of keep us afloat. So again, congratulations to all of those concerned in being part of those events and organizing it, because it's a lot of work. But I think that we're doing as best we can here, and that's quite good. Really, we're doing quite well. So thank you. So I just wanted to give you that update on where we are right now in our parish, and the bishop seemed to be very pleased with us, and next year we will be going into this process of they call Renew My Church, to look at how we're doing as a parish and whether we need to be merged with another parish. We don't want that, but but anyway, everything is a possibility. So the more proactive we can be in sort of keeping ourselves as vibrant as possible, the better. There we are. So anyway, today is April 23rd, and in England it would be the feast of St. George. Yeah, St. George, the one who slayed the dragon. Slew the dragon, maybe. Anyway, it's a feast over there, but it's not really celebrated over here. It's an optional kind of thing, and it's also Easter, so we don't really celebrate it, but it's a patron saint of England, so happy feast to those who are English, and we'll spare a prayer for them today. Apart from that, what else did I want to say to you today? I've been reading quite an interesting book. One of you gave it to me, and it's called Two Dogs and a Parrot, and it's written by Sister Joan Chichester, and she's a well-known author of, I'd say, spirituality and kind of self-help, that kind of thing. And so she's written many things, and she's a great speaker as well. But this book is kind of light-hearted, and it talks of her experience in her life of having pets. Yeah. So when she grew up, she wasn't really allowed to have dogs in the house. So they bought a parrot. So that's the parrot in the book, But then, when she became a nun, and in her convent life, over a period of time, there were two different dogs that she experienced. One is an Irish setter, and the other is a golden retriever. And so this book has got chapters, really, of episodes or experiences of that dog in her life, and she reflects then on it, and extracts, if you like, a lesson, and with a sort of spiritual reflection on it, really. And it's quite cute and quite funny at times. She talks, for example, in the first chapter, about this Irish setter called Danny, a big Irish setter, that kind of they took him into the convent, and very quickly she had to learn, that it was kind of like Danny's way or no way, that they tried to get him to sleep in the garage of the convent, but that didn't work. And very quickly, in a matter of days, the dog found its way into her room, and then, from being sort of down in the corner of the room to being at the foot of the bed, and then her waking up one morning to find this puppy dog kind of nuzzled into the side of her, really, and how she had to sort of, in some ways, just accept that this was the reality, that this dog has his way of living his life, that a dog has its own certain way of living, and that we just have to accept that that's how the dog is, that the dogs are like that. They're not as adaptable in some ways as we are. And so she then reflects on our own life and our ability to accept, which is far greater than we think, but it starts in some ways by like our ability to accept that, that a dog in our life really in some ways takes a kind of like a priority. I'm sat here with Jonah. Do you want to come say hello? Come on, come and say hello. I'm sat with Jonah, and some people. Here he is. Good morning, Jonah. Say, there you are. So I'm sat here with Jonah now, and it becomes pretty apparent after a while, of having a dog. The person that kind of like governs the house, that rules the roost, really, is not you. It's kind of the animal, and it's not a bad thing, but because it helps us to be more flexible, and it gives us kind of those therapy breaks that we need. So, like in the case of Jonah. When I first had him, we crate trained him, and so he slept for the first few years in his crate at night, and he got used to that quite quickly. And then when I took a sabbatical and I was gone for like 6 months, when I came back, it was obvious from day one that the crate was no longer good enough, was no longer acceptable, that. So he barked and he barked and he barked, when I got back, until I allowed him to sleep on my bed, and that's where he's been ever since. And so, people now sort of ask me, does Jonah sleep on your bed at night? And I say, no. I said, I sleep on Jonah's bed, which is true, very much so. Because very often, I'm actually on the edge of the bed and he has like free rein to roam around and roll around. And yeah, I'm the one that's like pushed to the corner of it. It's very much your pit, right? It's your crib. And so part of having a pet, having a dog certainly, is accepting that, really, is accepting that they have their way to live their life, and they can't adapt in the same way that we do. And so we have to learn to accept these animals as they are, So it's a great kind of practice of acceptance and a certain sense of humility too, which is a good thing to have. So this book with Joan Chichester is very good. She also, in another chapter, and I kind of enjoyed very much, was she was in her monastery. She was giving like counselling to different people in need. People would come and talk to her, and she would listen and try and figure out how she could help them on one thing and the other. And this one lady who used to come and visit her regularly, and who was having great trouble, anxiety and depression and almost despair. On one particular occasion, she was sat there, and Sister Joan didn't really know what to say to her or what to suggest to her, and this lady had a head in her hands and she was just in silence, but it was like a desperate silence. And to Sister Joan's kind of like dismay at first, she realized that they weren't alone in the room, but in fact Danny the setter had found his way into the room and was hiding behind a desk. And then in the moment of silence, Danny the setter kind of crept out from behind the desk and found its way to the sort of distraught woman and just put his head on her lap, and as he did that, so the woman, she kind of like broke down in tears, really, and she took hold of the dog's head and she nuzzled herself into the dog, and there was a moment of great comfort, but a moment of great, in some ways, like empathy, that the dog was able to do in some ways what Sister Joan couldn't do, So that was kind of quite cute, really. It was a moment of revelation for Sister Joan. And from there, Sister Joan goes on to talk about the importance of empathy, that, sometimes we don't have the solution to people's problems, and life is intended to be that way, But sometimes we can't. The best help we can do is to be with a person and to cry when they cry and to laugh when they laugh, And that's what really empathy is, whereas sympathy is slightly more distance, where you sympathize with somebody, you have compassion on somebody for their circumstances. But empathy is when you allow yourself to actually be with that person in their moment of despair or anxiety, and you just allow yourself to feel what they're feeling. And Danny, the setter, demonstrated that. And Danny, the setter, was able to do what Sister Joan Chichester could not do. So that was the chapter on empathy. So I'm about halfway through, and the coming up next is Duffy, who is the adopted golden retriever, and I'm sure there'll be more adventures to follow. But I do kind of recommend this book. It's kind of light-hearted but insightful. It's kind of light spirituality. But it kind of makes you pause and ponder. But it also questions, about our relationship to the animal world, and more importantly, to creation as a whole, And in her foreword, Sister Joan is, she sort of brings your attention to the fact that, we think ourselves, in some ways, as just as in terms of creation and the world, that everything is just given to us human beings just to dominate and just to use exactly the way that we want it. And she said that's not really quite how it's intended. If we pay more attention, especially to the creation stories in the book of Genesis. And if you take a time to look at the book of Genesis in chapter 1, and you look at the creation story, well, the first story, there are two creation accounts, and the first one is that one where let there be light, and then God saw that it was good. A very distant sense of creation, and a very domineering kind of sense of how things were, and God put man in charge of all these things, etc., etc. And that's the one clear creation story. But the second creation story, involving Adam and Eve, there's a moment in that, you see, where it says, that God allows the man to name all the different animals. So to name the birds, to name the fish, to name the snakes, to name the cuddly dogs, and give a name to them. In other words, introducing, human beings into a relation with creation. Creation is not just there. The world is not just there for us to consume and use for our ends. There is a relationship for us to have with our animals, lovable ones and unlovable ones, and the rest of creation too. In this last week or so, there's been lots of efforts with climate change, and it was Earth Day the other day, and the importance of that to us right now. It's an important message for us to take home. But if you take Sister Joan's kind of approach to it, really is that we need to be engaged with creation, engaged, with the natural world, and not just see it as something for us just to squander or to ruin or to destroy. And that can be seen most especially in our treatment of animals, and the importance sometimes, as she would say, to even listen to the animals, Listen to your pooch and see what message of God's love your pooch has for you. I know that us who are animal owners, we know what that's like. But if you've never owned a dog, then it's probably something you might want to consider, Somebody's quoted in Sister Joan's book sort of says that, and I'm not sure if I can find it here, that regarding, us, if you don't have an animal in your life, there's nothing wrong with you, There's nothing wrong with you. If you don't have a dog in your life, there's nothing wrong with you. But it's a sign that there's something wrong with your life. If you don't have a dog just once in your life, there's a sign there's something wrong with your life. Nothing wrong with you, but and there's something missing in your life, and it's very true. Jonah is my first kind of dog that I've owned. We always had a dog growing up. We had a West Highland Terrier, and my parents still have they have Shih Tzu dogs as well at home now. Oops, I've dropped this microphone. We grew up with a dog, but this is my first dog, and it's kind of a very enlightening, inspiring, and encouraging experience. I often talk of Jonah as being my guardian angel. He keeps me from trouble, in some ways. He's available to me whenever I want him. And he even prays with me when I pray too. I'm pretty sure of that as well. So our lives are blessed by that. And he is a part of God's creation. And I am blessed to be able to relate to Jonah, to relate to the animal, and give him the name, which God has given to me for him. So it's that engagement, that relationship with creation is all important for our very rich experience of living here in the world. Anyway, I rattled on enough now, and it's time for me to move on. I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible on Sunday at our Mass. It's the fourth Sunday of Easter, and it will be known as Good Shepherd Sunday. So guess what that's all about? We'll be talking about sheep on Sunday, and Welsh people are very talking about sheep, very good at talking about sheep, because we have more sheep, I think, in Wales than people. Or is that Australia? I'm not sure. But anyway, there's a lot of sheep in Wales. For now, I bid you farewell and have a good day on the Feast of St. George. Be joyful. Keep the faith. See you soon. Bye-bye.